Hi guys, let's open to Flamingo, the first lesson, the first chapter, the last lesson. I hope your books are there. Keep a pencil in your hand. Okay, I'll read as well as explain you the whole topic. Listen carefully. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of scolding, especially because M. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. Now, the narrator in the story, he is very scared of going to school because he may be scolded. Because his teacher M. Hamill, he had asked him to learn participles, that's a part of grammar, and this guy, he has not learned anything. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. He says, for a fraction of a second, I thought, let me go enjoy myself, play out of doors. The weather was beautiful, it was warm, bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. He could hear the chirping of the birds in the forest. The fields were open. The Prussian soldiers were doing their march past. It was all so much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. He says, seeing all the beautiful sights, I was so much attracted and I really wanted to enjoy. And why attend the class and that too the boring participles grammar? But he says, I was mentally strong enough not to go anywhere else and enjoy myself and rush to school. Now, on his way to the school, when I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Now, bulletin board is like a notice board. He sees a lot, many people there. For the last 20 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping. Okay, that board was something on which news were always posted. All hopeless news, all the battles they had lost, all the new laws, the commanding officers, and then this time he says, "Oh my God, what the hell must be there? Why are there so many people standing over there?" And he says, "What can be the matter now?" Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin called after me. Now this guy, he is running, and an apprentice. An apprentice is a person who is trained. It's a short training, and once you are trained, you can be put on the job. Now this, he was a blacksmith. His name was Watcher. He calls out to this little boy. He says, "Don't go so fast, bub." Bub means boy. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. There's a lot of time to reach school. Don't worry. Why are you hurrying so much? I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamill's little garden all out of breath. He thought probably because I'm late for school, this guy is making fun of me, and he runs very fast, and he reaches M. Hamill's, that is his teacher's garden, and he's all out of breath. He's not able to breathe properly. Usually when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. Now, normally when your schools begin, there's a lot of rush. Children are rushing, going to the classes, banging the desks, throwing your bags on the table. Children are repeating things together very loud, and then the teacher, he's banging the scale on the table. But this day was different. And he says, but now it was all so still, not a word. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. The narrator says that I was depending on all the loud noises that are normally there when you reach school. He thought I'll slip quietly and the teacher will not be able to see me because during that time there's a lot of commotion, lot of disturbance in school. But unfortunately, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Sunday morning, what happens in your locality? Everybody is sleeping, quiet. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. Oh, he sees his classmates. They are sitting in the places, and M. Hamill, he has this iron scale under his arm. And he had no other option but to stand at the door and open it. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how embarrassing he must have felt, and of course frightened because everything is quiet and he's going to be scolded. He's already late for school. But to his utter amazement, he's shocked, surprised, nothing happened. M. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." Now the name of the narrator, the little boy, is Franz. And the teacher very silently, very patiently says, "Please go and sit in your place. We had already started the class without you." I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that a teacher had on his beautiful green coat. Franz goes and sits. And then after some time he realizes that his teacher M. Hamill, he is wearing his beautiful dress, green colored coat, his frilled shirt and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, kadhai kiya, that he never wore except on inspection on prize days, except on special functions. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Everything seems to be so quiet. There is no sound at all. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. What was the most shocking and surprising thing for him that the back benches were always empty, but here they are the villagers who are sitting there. And he names a few: old Hauser with his 3-horned hat. Hauser is sitting with his hat. The former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. Many other, he has named a few. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had brought an old primer. Hauser had brought his tools, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. Hauser is there. He's also sitting and learning. While I was wondering about it all, M. Hamill mounted in his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me said, while Frank was still thinking, his thought process is disturbed, M. Hamill, he stands up in his chair, and as usual in his serious and gentle tone he says, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." He tells the class that this session that he is spending with them was the last class. Now the order has come from the country, Berlin, to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. They are places, Alsace and Lorraine. And he also informs them that a new master, head teacher, is going to come tomorrow to teach them. And that was the last French lesson. And he says, "Please be attentive, listen carefully." And then Franz says, "What a thunderclap these words were to me." He says, it was so beautiful. I was so excited, so happy, because studying was not Fran's liking. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up at the town hall. Now he realizes, I realize now what was written there on the bulletin board. And then Fran says, my last French lesson? Why? I hardly knew how to write. Now he's feeling bad. Oh my God, we are French people. It is the last French lesson? I have not learnt any French. I should never learn any more. Why? Because the Germans have taken over. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons. For seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar, he says, he curses himself. Hell with me, why didn't I learn my French lessons? Why did I go out and enjoy running after and looking for birds' eggs? Or maybe I went on the seesaw. And he says, my books that seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints, were old friends now that I couldn't give up. Now, what happens when we are in a good mood? We carry books or we carry anything. It does not matter to us. But when we are very tired and not in a good mood, the same weight seems a nuisance, a nonsense for us. And he says, my books yesterday, they were such a nuisance for me, but now they have become a part of my life and I am not going to give it away to anyone. And M. Hamill too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. Now he's thinking about the teacher. Oh my God, this teacher also, he is going to go away. I will never be able to see him. And then he says, he forgets that M. Hamill is strict and he is irritating. He gets irritated very easily. He beats with the ruler. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. Now Franz understands. Oh, this is the reason why Mr. Hamill was wearing such beautiful clothes. And now I understand why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. He also understands. Okay, this is the reason why all the old men of the village have come to learn the French language. It was because they were sorry too. And yes, he understands now why the old people of the village were there. It was because they also wanted to thank M. Hamill for all the 40 years of service that he had given to his country. And it says it was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Yes. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake? And when his name is being called, he gets nervous. Whatever he has learnt about participles, he jumbles it up, he forgets it. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. He's scared. Of course, he's as usual, he's scared of his teacher. But M. Hamill says, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, I've plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. This is what we do. Okay, let tomorrow come. We'll do it tomorrow. We always postpone things. And now you see where we've come out. That's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. That's the problem not only with the place Alsace, but with us also. We always put off, shift things for tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. And that tomorrow never comes. And even if it does come, it's too late for us to do it. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, those fellows, the Germans, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? Imagine, we do not know our language, and that is Hindi. Will we not again be overtaken? So same problem he is saying. Imagine we are Frenchmen and neither can we speak nor write. But you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We all have a great deal to reproach ourselves with. He says, Franz, you are not the only child who has to regret many things. All of us, in our way, have a lot of regret, somewhere or the other. And then he starts with the people who are supposed to regret. Your parents were not anxious to have you learn. He says, your parents, they were not very excited to send you to school to learn. Instead, they put you to work on a farm or at the mill so they could get a little money. And he says, forget about your parents. I am also to blame. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? He says, many a times I have told you to go and water my plants instead of coming and attending my lessons. And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? He says whenever he was in a mood for fishing, he gave the class a holiday. So he says, Franz, it's not only you, it's not only your parents, it's me also who has to be blamed. Then from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because he says French language is the most beautiful language. Since he is a Frenchman, he is boastful, he is proud of his language, and he says it is the clearest, it is clean, it is logical, and we must guard our language, because if we forget, he says, because when people are enslaved, when people become slaves, as long as they hold fast onto the language, it is as if they have the key to the prison. As long as you know your language, nobody can slave you. But if you don't know your language, you will always become slaves of other people. Then he opened a grammar and read us a lesson. I was amazed. He says, I was really surprised with myself to see how well I understood. All he said seemed so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. Franz says, neither had I ever listened so carefully to M. Hamel's lecture, nor had M. Hamel ever explained things so beautifully as he did on that day. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away, and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. It seemed as if Mr. Hamel wanted to give all the knowledge on that particular day. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. Then that day, M. Hamel had new copies for us written in a beautiful round hand. He had brought new copies and he had written France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of a desk. Everywhere you had, these pamphlet sorts. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. Now the classroom was very quiet. You could only hear the scratching of the pens. When you write with the pen, the sound that the pen or the pencil makes, you could only hear that sound. And once some beetles flew, insect, but nobody paid any attention to them. Now once an insect flew, but nobody cared to pay attention because all were busy taking in whatever Hamel was teaching that day. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the little babies who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. On the roof the pigeons cooed. They are pigeons and they are cooing, making that sound, and I thought to myself, Franz is angry here. He says, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? He is irritated that his country has been overtaken, that he has become slave. He is no longer free. Now, in between, while Hamel is teaching, Franz looks up. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair. Hamel is not moving and gazing. He is looking for a long time at one particular thing in the classroom. Then he's shifting his eyes to another particular thing. He did so He moved his eyes all over the class. It looked as if he wanted to take everything in his eyes. Okay. Then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy, for 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth, and the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. Some plants have grown, creepers, they have become longer and longer. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country the next day. He can hear the sound of trunks, boxes being pulled. It's his sister who is doing the packing up because they have to leave France the next day. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. M. Hamill taught till the last class. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the little babies, they chanted the ba, be, boo, ba, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Horser had put on his spectacles and holding his tools, primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion. He is full of emotions. It's difficult for him to speak. And it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remember it, that last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus. Angelus is the prayers. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. The same time as the prayers are going on, the church clock, same time the Prussians, they were returning from the drill, from the march past, sounded under our windows. M. Hamill stood up, very pale, his face is very dull. In his chair, I never saw him look so tall. He looked at M. Hamill. Franz looked at M. Hamill. It was perhaps the first time he had looked at his teacher so carefully, and that's why he says, I never saw him look so tall. And then Hamill says, my friends, said he, I. But something choked him. He could not go on. He is full of emotions. He is not able to speak. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and with all courage, he wrote on the blackboard, Vive la France, that is, goodbye France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall. He's in a very depressed mode. He's not standing straight. He's taking the help of the wall. And without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. He made a sign with his hand, telling the students to go. He says, the school is dismissed. It's over. The school is over for today. You may go. Okay, guys? I hope you've been able to understand. You are supposed to read it once again. And let's see the questions. The people in the story suddenly realize how precious the language is. Yes. What shows you this? Why does this happen? Yes. The people in the story suddenly realize how precious the language is to them. How do you come to know? And why does this happen? This happens because when we take things for granted. Yeah. Two Franz thinks, will they make them sing in Germans, even the pigeons? What could this mean? He is irritated. He is irritated with the fact. The first, you could answer the first question. The people in the story suddenly realize how precious the language is to them. Okay. Now let's come to talking about the text. This is important. When a people are enslaved, one people become slaves as long as they hold fast to their language. It is as if they had the key to the prison. As long as you know your language, you are free. Okay? Now, can you think of examples in history? No. I don't want you to do this. The first two lines. Understanding the text, first question. This is a 30 to 40 marker. 30 to 40 words, 2 marker. And this is 150. When a people are enslaved. I would like you to write it, understand the text, write it in your own words, and I will make you write all the important answers. So don't worry, and remember, you have to submit your notes every Friday for me to check. Yes, you have to send it. Please write neatly. Sangeeta, touch the margin. Assis, neat and clean work beta. Raj, you are already neat and clean. You're a nice child. Okay? Take care. I miss you. Love you, sweethearts. Bye.